The Great Council chamber on Nexus Prime had never seen such fear. 12 different alien species sat around the massive crystal table, and every single one of them was afraid. The air itself seemed heavy with worry as translators worked overtime to convert panic into words that each species could understand. Ambassador Veltar slammed his forearms down on the table. His blue skin flashed bright red patterns that meant anger in his people's language. The tall Etherian had ruled over 3 star systems for 50 years, but today he looked like a scared child. "They will destroy everything we have built," Veltar said, his voice shaking with emotion. "These humans are not like us. They are monsters who live for war." High Counselor Chindara raised one of her long, thin hands. The ancient Zephyrian was over 300 years old, and her people could read minds. Right now, she could feel the terror coming from every being in the room like waves of cold water. "We must remain calm," Chindara said, though her own voice was not steady. "Fear will not help us make good choices." But calm was the last thing anyone felt. For 3 full cycles, ever since they had received that first message from Earth, the galaxy had been preparing for war. The message itself had been simple enough. It said that humans had developed faster than light travel and wanted to make contact with other intelligent species. It should have been a happy moment for the galactic community. Instead, it had become their worst nightmare. The problem was not what the humans had said. The problem was what the Council had learned about them afterward. Their spy networks and information-gathering systems had worked day and night to learn about this new species. What they found had made every leader in the galaxy lose sleep. General Throckmar stood up from his chair. The massive Carillion warrior was 8 feet tall and covered in thick armor plating that was part of his natural body. His people were known as the greatest fighters in the galaxy, but even he looked nervous. "I have studied their military history," Throckmar said in his deep, rumbling voice. "These humans have been at war with each other for their entire existence. They have killed billions of their own kind. They have weapons that can destroy entire planets." He activated a holographic display that showed images from human history. The other delegates watched in horror as they saw pictures of human wars, massive battles with millions of soldiers, cities turned to ash, weapons that could level mountains. "Look at this," Throckmar continued, pointing to an image of human soldiers. "They fight even when they know they will die. They throw themselves at enemies that are stronger than them. They never surrender, never give up, never show mercy." Dr. Zinara, the chief scientist from the Helix Confederation, pulled up more data on her personal display. Her 6 eyes moved independently as she read through reports that had been gathered over the past 3 cycles. "Their technology development is unlike anything we have seen," she said, her voice high and quick with anxiety. "In just 200 years, they went from using animals for transportation to building starships. Most species take thousands of years to make such progress." She showed them charts and graphs that made the situation look even worse. Human population growth was explosive. Their industrial capacity was growing faster than any known species. They had colonized their entire solar system in less than a century. "But the most frightening thing," Dr. Zinara continued, "is how they think about warfare. Other species fight to defend territory or resources. Humans fight for ideas. They will die for concepts that cannot be touched or measured. This makes them impossible to predict or negotiate with." Ambassador Cretan from the Trade Federation spoke up. His people were known for being practical and focused on profit, but he looked worried. "Our economic models show that human expansion will destabilize every trade route in the galaxy," he said. "They produce goods faster and cheaper than any established species. If they decide to compete with us economically, they could crash our, entire system within 50 years." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The humans had not even made official contact yet, and they were already changing everything. High Counselor Chindara tried to project calm, but her psychic abilities were picking up so much fear from the room that it was making her physically sick. She had lived through 3 major galactic wars, but none of them had felt as dangerous as this moment. "What do our strategic analysts recommend?" she asked. General Throckmar activated another display. This one showed military formations and defensive positions throughout known space. Complete mobilization. he said grimly. Every fleet, every weapon, every defensive platform must be activated and ready. The humans sent that first message 3 cycles ago, and we have heard nothing since. This can only mean they are preparing for invasion. The other military representatives nodded in agreement. Admiral Kesvar from the Stellar Navy spoke next. Our best intelligence suggests they are building a massive invasion fleet, she said. Hundreds of ships, possibly thousands. They have been radio silent because they want to surprise us. Dr. Zin-Ara brought up more disturbing data. Computer, simulations show that human tactical thinking is completely different from ours. Where we try to minimize casualties and preserve resources, they focus on total victory regardless of cost. They have military strategies that involve sacrificing entire armies just to gain small advantages. The fear in the room was becoming overwhelming. Even the usually confident Etherian delegates were shifting nervously in their seats. Ambassador. Veltar stood up again, his skin now a deep purple color that meant desperation among his people. I propose we strike first, he said, his forearms gesturing wildly. We cannot wait for them to attack us. We must destroy their home system before they can launch their invasion. Several other delegates shouted their agreement. The room erupted into chaos as different species began arguing in their native languages. Some wanted to fight immediately. Others wanted to try hiding. A few suggested fleeing to other galaxies entirely. High Counselor Chindara used her psychic powers to project a feeling of calm over the entire chamber. It was difficult and tiring, but it worked. The shouting stopped, and everyone turned to, look at her. We will not make hasty decisions based on fear, she said firmly. But we must prepare for the worst possible outcome. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every species agreed to mobilize their full military forces. Trade routes were closed. Civilian populations were moved to secure locations. The galaxy prepared for war. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, none of them noticed the small ship that had just appeared on the edge of the Nexus Prime system. It was transmitting a simple message requesting permission to dock. The message was from someone called Ambassador Lee Daeho from planet Earth. The alarm bells on Nexus Prime had been ringing for 3 straight days. Every military unit in the galaxy was on high alert. Massive battleships surrounded the space station like angry metal sharks waiting for blood. The greatest fighting force in galactic history was ready for war. Then everything changed in one quiet moment. Chief Scanner Operator Vilek was monitoring the outer detection grid when his instruments picked up something impossible. A single ship had appeared at the edge of the system. It was small, maybe the size of a civilian transport. Nothing like the massive invasion fleet they had been expecting. High Counselor Chindara to the command center immediately. Vilek called over the station communication system. His voice was shaking with confusion. Within minutes, the command center was full of worried leaders. General Thrakmar pushed through the crowd, his heavy footsteps making the metal floor vibrate. Show me, he growled, staring at the display screens. The image that appeared made everyone in the room stop talking. The human ship looked almost peaceful. It had no visible weapons, no armor plating, no threatening design at all. It looked like something built for travel, not war. Are you certain this is human? Asked Dr. Zin-Ara, adjusting her scientific instruments to get better readings. The energy signature matches their technology, Vilek replied. But this makes no sense. Where is their invasion fleet? High Counselor Kindara felt a strange sensation through her psychic abilities. Instead of the aggressive thought she expected from human minds, she sensed something completely different. Nervousness, yes, but also hope and genuine friendliness. They are requesting permission to dock, reported Communications Officer Hanzar. The message is very polite. General Thrakmar slammed his fist on a control panel. This must be a trick. No species sends a single small ship to make first contact. They are trying to get inside our defenses. The message came through the speakers, translated into Galactic Standard by their computers. The voice was calm and respectful. This is Ambassador Lee Daeho of the planet Earth. I am requesting permission to dock at Nexus Prime for official, diplomatic contact. I come in peace and hope to begin friendly relations between our species and your galactic community. The words hung in the air like something from a strange dream. Everyone had expected threats or demands. Instead, they got what sounded like a polite introduction. Admiral Kesvar spoke up from her position near the tactical displays. This could be a scanning mission. They send one ship to study our defenses before the main attack. Or it could be a weapon, added Security Chief Draken. One small ship loaded with explosives or biological weapons. They sacrifice one person to kill our entire leadership. The debate continued for 20 minutes. Some wanted to destroy the ship immediately. Others thought they should capture it and interrogate the human. A few suggested letting it dock but surrounding it with enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. High Counselor Chindara finally made the decision. We let them dock, but we take every precaution. The docking bay chosen for the human ship was Nexus Prime's most secure area. It was normally used for dangerous cargo that might explode or leak toxic materials. The walls were made of the strongest metal known to galactic science. The bay could be sealed and ejected into space in seconds if needed. Around the docking area, the greatest collection of military force ever assembled waited in the shadows. Elite guards from every major species stood ready with weapons that could punch holes through battleship armor. Automated defense systems tracked every molecule of air in the bay. General Thrakmar personally commanded the security operation. He had fought in 17 major battles and never lost a single one. If the humans tried anything violent, they would face the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy. All units report ready, he said into his communication device. If that human even looks threatening, turn them into dust. The small human ship settled into the docking bay with surprising gentleness. Its engines made very little noise. Steam rose from its hull as it cooled down from the journey through space. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then the airlock opened. Every weapon in the bay focused on the opening. Sensors scanned for radiation, toxins, explosives, and biological weapons. Computer systems analyzed every possible threat. What came out of the ship was the most ordinary thing anyone could imagine. A human male stepped into the docking bay and looked around with curious eyes. He appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and a kind face. He wore what looked like formal clothing, but nothing that seemed military or threatening. On his nose sat a pair of glasses that seemed to be for vision correction rather than any kind of technology. Ambassador Lee Dae-ho was exactly as average as a person could be. He was not tall or short, not particularly strong or weak, not young or old. If humans had been a known species, he would have been completely forgettable in a crowd. He carried a single small case in his hands and moved with the careful steps of someone trying not to seem threatening. When he noticed all the weapons pointed at him, he stopped walking and raised his free hand in what appeared to be a peaceful gesture. "Hello," he said in perfect galactic standard. His pronunciation so good it shocked the linguists monitoring the situation. "My name is Lee Dae-ho, and I am very happy to meet all of you." The guards remained tense, but something about his voice made several of them lower their weapons slightly. He did not sound like a warrior or conqueror. He sounded like someone greeting neighbors at a community gathering. General Thrakmar stepped out of the shadows, his massive form casting a dark shadow over the small human. "State your purpose here, human." Lee Dae-ho smiled, and it was the most genuine smile any of them had ever seen. "I am here to introduce my people to the galactic community. We hope to become friends and learn from each other." He reached toward his small case and immediately 50 weapons aimed at his chest. Energy weapons hummed with power. Projectile guns clicked as safeties were turned off. "Wait," Lee Dae-ho said, moving very slowly. "Please do not be alarmed. I want to show you something special." His fingers opened the case with careful movements. Inside, nestled in soft padding, were several dozen small, round, golden-brown objects. A pleasant smell filled the air, something warm and sweet that none of the alien species had ever experienced before. Lee Dae-ho picked up one of the objects and held it out toward General Thrakmar. "These are called cookies. My wife Kim Hae-won made them specially for this meeting. She insisted I bring them because she believes you cannot have a proper introduction without sharing food." The silence in the docking bay was complete. The most heavily armed location in galactic history had just been offered homemade baked goods by a middle-aged human who looked like he would rather be gardening than making first contact. General Throckmar stared at the small brown object being offered to him. His combat training had prepared him for every possible scenario except this one. "Cookies?" he asked, his voice sounding confused for the first time in decades. General Throckmar had faced charging battle beasts on the war moons of Kepler 7. He had survived the great plasma storms of the Vortex Nebula. He had defeated enemy champions in single combat more times than he could count. But he had never been offered a cookie by a smiling human, and he had no idea what to do. The small brown object sat in Lee Daeho's outstretched hand like a puzzle that could not be solved. Around the docking bay, elite soldiers from 12 different species stared at the scene with growing confusion. "It is food," Lee Daeho explained patiently, as if he was talking to children instead of the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "My wife makes them with flour, sugar, butter, and chocolate chips. They taste very good, and sharing food is how humans show friendship." Security Chief Droken stepped forward, his scanning equipment beeping rapidly. "The objects contain unknown organic compounds. They could be poison or biological weapons disguised as food." Lee Daeho looked genuinely surprised at this suggestion. "Oh no, they are just cookies. Here, let me show you they are safe." Without any concern for his own safety, he took one of the cookies from his case and ate it in front of everyone. "See? Just delicious food." The alien soldiers watched in amazement as the human enjoyed what he claimed was a simple snack. Their instruments detected no signs of distress or poisoning. Lee Daeho looked perfectly healthy and very content. "Would you like to escort me to the council chambers?" he asked politely. "I have a presentation prepared and I brought enough cookies for everyone." 20 minutes later, the main council chamber was filled with the strangest scene in galactic history. The most powerful beings in known space sat around their crystal table, each with a small brown cookie placed carefully in front of them. None of them had touched the mysterious human food. Lee Daeho stood at the center of the chamber with his presentation display activated. He looked completely comfortable, as if he spoke to alien councils every day of his life. "Before I begin," he said with that same warm smile, "I want to thank you for agreeing to meet with me. The people of Earth are very excited about joining the galactic community." High Counselor Chindara used her psychic abilities to scan the human's mind. What she found made her more confused than afraid. Lee Daeho was genuinely happy to be there. His thoughts were full of curiosity about the other species and hope for future cooperation. There was no sign of deception or violent intentions. "You may begin your presentation," she said carefully. Lee Daeho activated his holographic display, and images of Earth appeared in the air above the table. The alien delegates saw blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds. It looked like a peaceful, beautiful world. "Earth is the third planet in our solar system," Lee Daeho began. "We have about 8 billion people living in harmony across 7 continents. Our society is built on cooperation, learning, and mutual respect." Ambassador Veltar interrupted, his skin flashing confused colors. "But what about your military history, the constant warfare, the billions of deaths?" Lee Daeho nodded seriously. "Yes, we did fight wars in our past. Many wars, in fact. It is not something we are proud of, but it taught us important lessons." He changed the holographic display to show images of human cities. The aliens saw massive structures where different cultures lived and worked together. They saw humans of different colors and appearances cooperating on complex projects. "Every species goes through a violent period while learning to survive," Lee Daeho continued. "But we discovered something more powerful than fighting. We learned that our differences make us stronger when we work together instead of against each other." Dr. Zinara leaned forward in her chair. "But our intelligence reports show that you have weapons capable of destroying planets." "Yes, we do," Lee Daeho admitted. "We also have the ability to heal diseases, create art, explore space, and make cookies. The question is not what we can do, but what we choose to do." He showed them more images of human society. Schools where children from different cultures learn together. hospitals where human doctors worked to save lives, laboratories where scientists studied the universe to better understand it. We spent 3 cycles studying your galactic community before making contact, Lee Dae-ho explained. We wanted to learn your customs and languages so we could approach you with respect. General Throckmar stood up, his massive form towering over the human. If you come in peace, why did you stop all communications for 3 cycles? We thought you were preparing for war. Lee Dae-ho looked genuinely sorry about this misunderstanding. We were preparing, but not for war. We were learning. My wife, Kim Hae-won, led a team of scientists to study every first contact situation in recorded galactic history. We wanted to avoid the mistakes that had caused problems before. He activated another part of his presentation. We discovered that most conflicts between species come from fear and misunderstanding. So we decided to approach you the way humans approach new neighbors. We brought gifts, we learned your language, and we came with respect. High Counselor Chindara finally picked up her cookie and took a small bite. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was sweet and warm and somehow made her feel happy. Around the table, she sensed the other delegates beginning to relax. These cookies are quite good, she admitted. Lee Dae-ho's face lit up with joy. Kim Hae-won will be so pleased to hear that. She spent weeks perfecting the recipe using ingredients that would be safe for all known species biology. More delegates began trying their cookies. Even General Throckmar took a cautious bite and discovered that it tasted better than any food he had eaten in years. I have a question, said Ambassador Cretan from the Trade Federation. If you are truly peaceful, why do you have such advanced military technology? Lee Dae-ho considered this question carefully. Because peace is not the same as being defenseless. We learned that the best way to avoid war is to be prepared for it, while always choosing cooperation first. The mood in the chamber was changing. The fear that had dominated the room for days was slowly being replaced by curiosity. These delegates had expected monsters, but instead they had found a polite, middle-aged man who wanted to share cookies and talk about cooperation. What exactly do you want from us? Asked Dr. Zin-Ara. Lee Dae-ho smiled again. We want to learn from you. We want to share what we have learned. We want to be good neighbors in this galaxy we all share. For the first time in 3 cycles, the Galactic Council began to think that maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about humanity. The council session had been going for 6 hours, and nobody wanted it to end. What started as a meeting about preparing for war had turned into the most interesting conversation any of the delegates had experienced in decades. Lee Dae-ho opened a thermal container and poured himself a cup of dark liquid that smelled rich and earthy. This is coffee, he explained. Another human invention. It helps us think clearly during long meetings. Several delegates asked to try the coffee. Within minutes, half the Galactic Council was discovering the amazing effects of caffeine while learning about human culture. I want to address the concerns about human violence directly, Lee Dae-ho said, activating a new section of his presentation. It is true that our species has a history of conflict, but that history taught us lessons that shaped who we are today. The holographic display showed a timeline of human development. The delegates saw early human tribes fighting over resources, then growing into larger groups that fought over territory, then becoming nations that fought over ideas. Each period of conflict taught us new ways to cooperate, Lee Dae-ho explained. When small tribes fought, we learned to form larger communities for protection. When communities fought, we learned to create nations for stability. When nations fought, we learned to build international organizations for peace. Ambassador Veltar studied the timeline with growing interest. So your wars were not just destruction. They were learning experiences. Exactly, Lee Dae-ho said. Every mistake taught us something valuable. We learned that diversity makes us stronger. We learned that cooperation produces better results than competition. We learned that sharing resources creates more wealth than hoarding them. He showed them images of the United Nations, the International Space Station, and other examples of human cooperation. These organizations were built by former enemies who decided to work together instead of fighting. High Counselor Chindara was fascinated by this concept. Most species in the galaxy still struggle with internal conflicts, How did humans overcome this? We realized that our differences were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be combined, Lee Dae-ho replied. A human scientist named Kim Min-woo proved that groups with diverse perspectives solve problems faster than groups where everyone thinks the same way. Dr. Zinara pulled up data on her personal display. This goes against everything we know about species development. Most civilizations achieve unity by suppressing differences, not celebrating them. Lee Dae-ho nodded. That was our first approach too. It did not work very well. We spent thousands of years trying to make everyone the same. We only achieved real peace when we started appreciating our differences. He showed them examples of human art, music, and literature, created by combining different cultural traditions. The alien delegates were amazed by the complexity and beauty that emerged from blending different approaches. This is a song composed by Park Soo-jin, Lee Dae-ho said, as music filled the chamber. She combined traditional Korean instruments with African rhythms and European harmonies. No single culture could have created this alone. The music was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever heard. It was complex, but somehow made perfect sense. It contained patterns that spoke to each species in different ways. General Throckmar was particularly impressed. This strategic thinking could be applied to military planning, combining different tactical approaches instead of relying on single methods. That is exactly right, Lee Dae-ho agreed. Human military strategy is based on adaptability and combining different approaches, but we discovered that the same principles work even better for building things than for destroying them. He showed them images of human engineering projects, massive bridges, tall buildings, and space stations that were designed by teams of people from different backgrounds working together. When we started applying military-style strategic thinking to peaceful projects, our progress accelerated dramatically, Lee Dae-ho explained. We went from basic flight to space travel in less than a century, because we combined the knowledge of many different cultures. Admiral Kesver asked the question that everyone was thinking. If humans are so focused on peace and cooperation, why do you still maintain such powerful military forces? Lee Dae-ho became more serious. Because we learned that peace requires strength. The galaxy's history shows that peaceful species often become victims of aggressive ones. We choose cooperation, but we are prepared to defend ourselves and our friends if necessary. He showed them data about human military capabilities. The numbers were impressive but not overwhelming. More importantly, the structure of human defense was clearly designed to protect rather than conquer. Our military doctrine is called defensive cooperation, Lee Dae-ho explained. We focus on protecting ourselves and our allies rather than attacking others. We build strength to prevent wars, not to start them. Security Chief Draken studied the military data carefully. These defense systems are designed to stop invasions, not support them. The humans have built a military that cannot easily be used for conquest. That was intentional, Lee Dae-ho confirmed. We learned that the best way to prevent war is to make it unprofitable for everyone involved. The delegates spent the next hour discussing human philosophy and social structure. They learned that human government was based on representation and compromise rather than domination. They discovered that human economics focused on creating value rather than taking it from others. I have another question, said Ambassador Cretan. What do humans want from joining the galactic community? What are you hoping to gain? Lee Dae-ho's answer surprised everyone. We want to learn from you. Each of your species has solved problems that we have not even discovered yet. The Zephyrians have mastered mental communication across vast distances. The Corellians have created sustainable energy systems. The Etherians have developed art forms that exist in multiple dimensions. He gestured to the assembled delegates. Humans are good at combining different approaches to create new solutions, but we can only combine what we know. You have knowledge that could help us solve problems we have been working on for generations. Dr. Zinara realized what the human was suggesting. You want to create cooperative research programs? Yes, Lee Dae-ho said enthusiastically. Imagine what we could discover if we combined human adaptability with Zephyrian psychic abilities and Corellian energy technology. The universe is full of mysteries that no single species can solve alone. High Counselor Chindara felt a strange sensation through her psychic abilities. For the first time in her long life, she was sensing thoughts of genuine excitement about the future from an entire room full of leaders. "You really believe this cooperation could work?" she asked. Lee Dae-ho smiled and reached for another cookie. "Kim Hae-won always says that the best meals are made when different cooks share their recipes. I think the same is true for civilizations." The council meeting had officially ended 3 hours ago, but nobody wanted to leave. Delegates who had arrived expecting to plan for war were now engaged in the most exciting conversations of their careers. The cookie container was empty, and Lee Dae-ho had shared 2 more pots of coffee with his new friends. General Throckmar was deep in discussion with Lee Dae-ho about military strategy. The massive Carillion warrior had initially planned to study human tactics to defeat them. Instead, he was learning approaches that could revolutionize peacekeeping throughout the galaxy. "Your concept of adaptive defense is brilliant," Throckmar admitted. "We have always focused on overwhelming force or perfect protection, but your idea of changing tactics based on the situation could prevent conflicts before they start." Lee Dae-ho pulled up tactical diagrams on his display. "My colleague Colonel Nam Kyung-ho developed these methods after studying every major conflict in human history. He discovered that flexible responses work better than fixed strategies." Dr. Zin-Ara joined their conversation, her scientific mind fascinated by the human approach to problem solving. Could these adaptive methods be applied to research and exploration? "Absolutely," Lee Dae-ho replied. "Human science advances fastest when we combine different disciplines. We have a researcher named Dr. Yoon Hye-jin who applies military strategic thinking to medical research. She has made breakthrough discoveries by treating diseases like military campaigns." The idea captured everyone's attention. Ambassador Veltar, who had been terrified of humans just hours earlier, was now taking notes on human organizational methods. "This could solve problems we have been struggling with for generations," Veltar said, his skin patterns showing excitement instead of fear. "The Etherian Empire has been trying to improve our trade efficiency for decades." Lee Dae-ho became even more animated. Trade efficiency is exactly the kind of problem that benefits from multiple perspectives. "Would you be interested in a practical demonstration?" High Counselor Chindara was intrigued. "What kind of demonstration?" "Well," Lee Dae-ho said, looking around the room, "I noticed that your council has been deadlocked on a trade dispute between the Carillions and the Etherians for several cycles. Your traditional diplomatic methods have not been successful. Would you be willing to try a human approach?" The room fell silent. The trade dispute Lee Dae-ho mentioned had been causing tension throughout the galaxy. The mineral-rich Carillions needed advanced technology, while the tech-advanced Etherians needed raw materials. Both sides wanted the best deal possible, and negotiations had stalled completely. General Throckmar and Ambassador Veltar looked at each other suspiciously. Their species had been arguing about this issue for so long that it had become personal. "What exactly are you proposing?" Throckmar asked carefully. Lee Dae-ho activated his presentation system and created a simple diagram. "Instead of thinking about this as a competition where one side wins and the other loses, what if we designed a solution where both sides get more than they originally wanted?" Ambassador Veltar's skin flashed confused colors. "That is impossible. Economics is about limited resources. If one side gets more, the other must get less." "That is true if you only trade existing resources," Lee Dae-ho agreed. "But what if you created new resources that neither side could make alone?" He drew connections between Carillion mining capabilities and Etherian technology on his diagram. Carillions are the best miners in the galaxy. Etherians are the best technologists. What happens if you combine those strengths instead of just trading the results? Dr. Zin-Ara understood immediately. Joint production facilities. The Carillions could extract materials using Etherian technology improvements, while the Etherians could design new devices using Carillion geological knowledge. "Exactly," Lee Dae-ho said with enthusiasm. "Instead of trading minerals for technology, you could create entirely new materials and devices that neither species could develop alone." The room erupted with discussion as delegates realized the implications. Instead of a simple trade agreement, Lee Dae-ho was proposing a partnership that could benefit the entire galaxy. Admiral Kesvar pulled up economic projections on her display. This could increase production efficiency by 300% while reducing costs for both species, and the new materials could be shared with other species, added Ambassador Cretan. This would create new markets and opportunities for everyone. Within an hour, the deadlock that had paralyzed galactic trade for years was completely solved. General Throckmar and Ambassador Veltar were working together to design joint facilities that would benefit both their species. High Counselor Chindara watched the transformation with amazement. Through her psychic abilities, she could sense the shift in everyone's thinking. Fear and suspicion were being replaced by excitement and hope. Lee Dae-ho, she said, during a brief pause in the planning. How did you know this approach would work? The human ambassador smiled and reached for his coffee cup. Because it is the same method humans use to solve problems in our families. When my wife Kim Hai-wan and I disagree about something, we do not try to win an argument. We look for solutions that make both of us happy. The simplicity of this statement struck everyone in the room. The most complex diplomatic problem in the galaxy had been solved using the same approach humans used for household disagreements. Dr. Zinara looked up from the trade projections she was calculating. The economic benefits from this single agreement could fund exploration of 3 new star systems, or research into new technologies that could benefit all our species, added Ambassador Veltar. Lee Dae-ho activated another section of his presentation. That brings me to my final proposal. The people of Earth would like to invite the Galactic Council to establish a permanent cooperation center on our planet. He showed them images of a beautiful location on Earth where construction was already beginning. Rolling hills surrounded a valley where humans were building facilities designed to accommodate every known species' needs. We have been preparing this center for 2 years, Lee Dae-ho explained. It includes research laboratories, cultural exchange facilities, diplomatic meeting spaces, and living areas designed for all galactic species. General Throckmar studied the construction images. You built this before making contact with us. Yes, Lee Dae-ho confirmed. We wanted to show our commitment to cooperation. The center will be managed jointly by representatives from every species, but Earth will provide the location and basic facilities as our contribution to galactic civilization. The delegates spent the next 2 hours reviewing plans for the Cooperation Center. It was more advanced than anything the galactic community had ever attempted. The humans had designed spaces for Zephyrian psychic meditation, Carillion combat training, Etherian artistic creation, and dozens of other species-specific needs. High Counselor Kindara finally called for a formal vote. All those in favor of accepting humanity's proposal for membership in the Galactic Council. Every hand, tentacle, appendage, and manipulator in the room rose in agreement. The vote was unanimous. Lee Dae-ho stood up and bowed respectfully to the assembled delegates. On behalf of all humanity, I thank you for this honor. We promise to be good neighbors and loyal friends. As delegates began making plans to visit Earth, General Throckmar approached Lee Dae-ho privately. I must apologize for preparing to attack your species. We were afraid because we did not understand. Lee Dae-ho shook the general's massive hand. Fear of the unknown is natural for any intelligent species. What matters is what you do after you learn the truth. You chose friendship over fear, and that makes you the kind of people humans want as neighbors. 6 months after the historic first contact meeting, Nexus Prime looked completely different. The massive military fleets that had surrounded the station were gone, replaced by peaceful research vessels and diplomatic transports. The emergency war preparations had been transformed into the largest peaceful cooperation project in galactic history. Lee Dae-ho stood in the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Center, watching construction ships work together in ways that would have been impossible before. Carillion heavy construction vessels worked alongside delicate Etherian precision craft, while Zephyrian ships provided psychic coordination between all the crews. The progress is remarkable, said High Counselor Kindara as she joined him at the large viewing window. 6 months ago, those species could barely negotiate trade agreements. Now they are building the future together. Lee Dae-ho smiled as he watched a Carillion worker share lunch with an Etherian engineer. My wife always says that the best way to make friends is to work on a project together. It seems she was right. The Galactic Cooperation Center was only the beginning. Throughout the galaxy, species that had been suspicious neighbors for centuries were discovering the benefits of human-style cooperation. Joint research stations were being established. Cultural exchange programs were flourishing. Trade disputes were being solved through creative partnerships instead of lengthy negotiations. Dr. Zinara approached them, carrying a data pad full of reports from across the galaxy. The economic improvements are beyond our most optimistic projections, she announced. Cooperative production methods have increased efficiency by an average of 400% across all participating systems. And the scientific discoveries, added Dr. Yoon Tae-kyung, who had arrived from Earth the previous week to help establish the xenobiology research programs. We have made more progress in 6 months than most species achieve in decades. The breakthrough discoveries were happening because human adaptability was being combined with alien expertise. Zephyrian psychic abilities allowed human researchers to communicate directly with microscopic organisms. Carillion energy manipulation techniques helped human engineers build more efficient spacecraft. Etherian multidimensional thinking enabled human mathematicians to solve equations that had been impossible before. General Throckmar entered the observation area, carrying a small child in his massive arms. The young Carillion girl was giggling as the fearsome warrior general made funny faces at her. My daughter Krina wanted to see the pretty ships, he explained with the embarrassed tone of a tough military leader who had been completely conquered by a 4-year-old. She is very excited about visiting Earth next month. The child exchange programs had been Lee Dae-ho's idea. Young people from different species were spending time with human families, while human children visited alien worlds. The cultural barriers that had separated species for thousands of years were disappearing as children made friends across the galaxy. How is her human language practice going? Lee Dae-ho asked. Little Krina looked up at him with bright eyes and said in carefully pronounced English, I want to learn how to make cookies like Mrs. Kim Hae-won. Everyone in the observation area laughed. Kim Hae-won's cookies had become famous throughout the galaxy. Every diplomatic meeting now began with refreshments, and cooperation improved dramatically when people shared food together. Ambassador Veltar arrived with exciting news from the Etherian systems. The joint exploration mission has discovered 3 new habitable planets in the Andromeda approach vector. All 3 have unique mineral compositions that could support different types of colonies. Instead of competing over the new worlds, the galactic species were planning cooperative settlements where multiple cultures could develop together. Human organizational methods were being used to design communities where different species could live side by side, while maintaining their unique characteristics. My favorite development, said Admiral Kesvar as she joined the group, is how much safer space travel has become. When species work together instead of against each other, there are far fewer pirates and conflicts to worry about. The Unified Galactic Defense Network was another human innovation. Instead of each species maintaining separate military forces that sometimes fought each other, they now had coordinated defense systems that protected everyone. Pirates and aggressive species found themselves facing the combined might of the entire galactic community. Lee Dae-ho received a communication message on his personal device. After reading it, his face lit up with joy. What is it? Asked High Counselor Chindara. News from Earth, Lee Dae-ho replied. My daughter, Lee So-young, has just graduated from the Galactic Academy with the highest marks in xenocultural studies. She will be the first human ambassador to the newly discovered spiral arm civilizations. The expansion of galactic civilization was accelerating as human exploration methods were combined with alien technologies. New species were being discovered regularly, and the cooperative approach developed for human integration was being used to welcome each new civilization peacefully. Dr. Zinara looked up from her data pad with amazement. The rate of peaceful first contacts has increased by 800% since humans joined the galactic community. Your methods are revolutionizing how we approach new species. It is not just our methods, Lee Dae-ho replied modestly. It is what happens when everyone contributes their best ideas. Humans are good at adaptation, but every species has unique strengths. As the sun set over Nexus Prime, casting beautiful colors through the transparent aluminum windows, Lee Dae-ho thought about how much had changed since that first terrifying day when he arrived with a case full of cookies. The galaxy that had prepared for war had instead discovered the power of friendship. Species that had been enemies for generations were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. Children were growing up in a universe where cooperation was normal instead of unusual. High Counselor Chindara used her psychic abilities to sense the emotions of everyone in the observation area. Instead of the fear and suspicion that had dominated galactic politics for centuries, she felt hope, excitement, and genuine affection between beings who had once been strangers. "Lee Dae-ho," she said thoughtfully, "what do you think would have happened if your species had approached us with military force instead of cookies?" The human ambassador considered the question seriously. "We probably would have had a war that lasted for generations and accomplished nothing except destruction. Every species would have been weaker and more afraid." He gestured toward the cooperative construction work happening outside the station. "Instead, we have this. We have friendship where we could have had conflict. We have discovery where we could have had destruction. We have a future where our children will grow up as citizens of the galaxy instead of enemies hiding from each other." General Throckmar shifted his sleeping daughter to a more comfortable position in his arms. "My people have a saying. The strongest warrior is one who never needs to fight because everyone wants to be his friend." "Kim Hae-won says something similar," Lee Dae-ho replied with a smile. "She always tells me that the best way to win an argument is to make the other person so happy they forget what they were arguing about." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky above Nexus Prime, the representatives of a dozen species stood together, watching the peaceful construction of humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Proof that cooperation was more powerful than competition, that understanding was stronger than fear, and that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is offer cookies to strangers. The galaxy had prepared for chaos, and instead discovered that the universe was much more interesting when everyone worked together to explore it. In her quarters that evening, High Counselor Chindara wrote her final report on the Human Integration Project. Her last sentence read, "Sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into friends. The humans did not conquer the galaxy. They invited us all to build something better together."